Hi, this is Olena of popthepimple.com and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a little different. I want to talk to you a little bit about my experience with my flaws and my imperfections and what's changed from the way I used to see myself to the way I see myself today. I think this can help a lot of people. Maybe you can relate. And if you do, I'd love to hear from you below in the comments. Let's get into it. I used to pick myself apart. This started from a very early age where I would find something I disliked about myself and I would just focus on it. I would dwell on it. I would believe it to be true. For example, once upon a time, I thought I had big ears. So I would never ever wear a ponytail because I was afraid that people would see my big ears. My ears were never really big. Later, it was another thing, and it was always a thing. It was always something. But the next thing was I thought I had unattractive toes. I was so ashamed of my ugly toes that I would wear socks with sandals even in the summer. My mom was like, "Why?" But I thought that my toes were ugly. I didn't want anybody to see them, and so I hid them. Another thing I picked apart were my thighs at one point. I was probably around 12, and by then I had quite the growth spurt. I was probably one of the tallest people in my class, I think second or third tallest. And so obviously I was a head taller than all my friends. And because I was taller, I was also bigger, right? So my thigh next to my friend's thigh would appear larger. But I didn't make all these logical conclusions because when we're younger, our prefrontal cortex that's responsible for logic and reasoning, it doesn't function so well. That baby only develops when we're about 25 or finishes developing when we're around 25. And when you're younger, you tend to draw the wrong conclusions about your surroundings because you're making the conclusions from an emotional place, not a logical one. And so, of course, I thought I was fat because I wasn't able to reason with myself yet, right? I wasn't able to better understand the situation. And so that's when I started, I think, wearing lots and lots of baggy clothing. My excuse was that it was cool, but I was just kind of hiding my body because I was finding reasons not to be comfortable in it. The next thing that I began focusing on or picking apart was my skin. Roughly around the time I began to feel fat, I also began to feel unattractive here, specifically with my skin, because a lot of my friends, it has a lot to do with comparison, had better skin than me. A lot of them had just totally clear, awesome skin, right? I thought that there was something wrong with me. I didn't know how to solve it. Back then, the only option that I was given was Accutane, and I didn't take it because it didn't feel good to me. When I read the side effects and stuff, I'm like, nope, not for me, not gonna do this, gonna try a different way. And so for the next many years, my latest obsession became my skin. I don't know if you noticed, there's a pattern here of wanting to fix something within myself or hide something within myself, focusing on something within myself that I didn't like. But what's interesting is, because time is such an amazing thing for perspective, right? Years passed, and looking back, I actually realized that none of the things that I focused on were actually true. So I didn't have ugly ears, I didn't have ugly toes, I didn't have fat thighs. I was actually very skinny and I didn't know it because I was using a very twisted reference point of comparison. Then the skin thing, when I look back at pictures, even in my teens, I thought my skin was pretty bad, right? But looking back at photos, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was mild at best, but it was such a point of insecurity that it felt much bigger and more severe than it was. So what I'm sharing with you is that actually I hadn't seen myself accurately for years, for the majority of my life. Whatever I focused on seemed so much worse than it ever was. Right? Because I made it real for myself. Whatever I focused on, I made real for myself. It's actually how I began seeing myself. It totally tinted my perception of myself, meaning I made it all up. It was all in my mind, and it caused so much unnecessary suffering and hiding and shame and all these weird feelings that didn't feel good, all because of something that I actually made up. I think about 3 years back, I had this breakthrough where I realized that my whole life I was trying to fix something within myself. I wasn't accepting who I was ever. It was always something I needed to fix. And then, it was lots of physical stuff, but later it was also like, oh, I need to be more confident. I need to be this and this and this. And it was always something I needed to fix. There was never any real acceptance and self-love. It was only like change, change, change. For what? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. I kept trying to fit some mold that I made up in my own mind. I always had some arbitrary condition that I wanted to meet, but I didn't have to fix myself. So the breakthrough that I had was that there was nothing to fix all along. And when I thought back about it all, it kind of made me cry from joy, realizing that it was all just in my own head. Had I seen myself with appreciation the whole time, had I loved myself and accepted myself the whole time, I probably would have had a totally different experience, an easier experience, a more joyful experience. And what I was actually doing the whole time was distracting myself from loving myself and from living my dream life. Because there was always something to fix, I always had something to do that was not following my dreams. I think that I was just afraid to live my dream life, and that I created all these things to fix so that I didn't have to go after my dreams in case they didn't turn out. What I see it as is total self-sabotage. That's all that it was. Years of self-sabotage. So the day of my breakthrough, it all changed for me. It was almost like a veil was lifted and I was able to see myself for who I was and how far I've come despite my own perception of myself. That's when my life began to change. Not surprisingly, only 2 months roughly after I had this breakthrough, I had this freedom to then do whatever I wanted just because I wanted to. I had this freedom to feel good now. My feeling good didn't depend on me looking a certain way or being a certain way. Just 2-ish months afterwards, my dream man walked into my life. I met the love of my life, who I'm currently married to 2 years later. It really opened me up, this realization and this self-acceptance and this self-love. It was really blossoming after that on a different level, okay? And it transformed my life. My business started to grow. My love life was blossoming. Everything was just turning out so beautifully. All those dreams that I was afraid of living out for myself, all the goals I was afraid that I'd never reach, I was suddenly reaching. Time and time and time again. My confidence was renewed, everything else. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because my life really changed when I started accepting myself, when I stopped looking for things wrong in me. Because that's how we're actually born. We're born happy with ourselves. You notice a little baby, they love attention. They love attention. They're confident. Boo, goo, goo, gaga. Look at me, right? Mommy, daddy, look at me. It's all about look at me. They love attention. We love attention. We love love. We're confident. We're born confident. We're born loving ourselves. We're born accepting ourselves. But it's habits of thinking that we pick up. We might hear somebody criticizing somebody else's appearance and we might think, oh, maybe this applies to me as well. Because like I said, our prefrontal cortex only finishes developing when we're around 25. Meaning up to that point, we tend to misinterpret a lot of what is happening around us. And we usually take it in a very emotional and personal way. And some of those ideas and thoughts that surround us that may have nothing to do with us, we take personally and we make them a part of our identities, or we make them a part of how we perceive who we are. And these things are learned, luckily. And what's great about things that we learn, we can also unlearn them, or we can learn better ways of seeing ourselves, more accurate ways of seeing ourselves. Because I have to tell you something I learned from all my spiritual growth, because I'm obsessed, and all the books that I've read. The consensus is this: if it feels good, it's true. If it doesn't feel good, It's not true. And it didn't feel good thinking that my ears were big. It didn't feel good thinking that my skin was the worst. It didn't feel good hiding my toes or just certain aspects of my personality. None of it felt good, which meant that it wasn't true. It was just a mistake in my own perception. Feeling good is actually natural. We're born feeling good about ourselves specifically. So when we feel bad about ourselves, it is absolutely not natural. It is something that we've picked up. It's a habit of thinking that we can definitely fix. I don't like that word fix though, but we can definitely break the habit of being mean to ourselves in our own minds and seeing ourselves inaccurately in a way that just doesn't feel good or make any sense. So we can learn to love ourselves again. We can learn to accept ourselves again. And one thing that really helped me do that is by programming a ton of affirmations into my phone that would pop up time and time again to keep me centered and knowing who I really am. So things like, I am grateful for my body. I am worthy just as I am. I am superhuman healthy. I love my life. All is well in my world. And a ton of other ones. And so by programming these new thoughts that were really the original thoughts into my phone to pop up throughout the day, I kept constantly reminding myself of what is true instead of what is not. And those new ideas, those affirmations, they permeated my subconscious and became a part of my identity. So this is now how I actually see myself in a natural way. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like I'm convincing myself that all is well in my world. No, everything feels really, really awesome in my world. There's this newfound lightness and happiness and freedom and feeling good for no reason that wasn't there before, right? But it took a little bit of effort to unlearn the old stuff that didn't serve me and to learn the new stuff. But what I'm saying is that any one of us can do it. And it's really, really, really powerful. So I hope this video has helped you in some way identify where you've been holding on to thoughts or ideas about yourself that don't really serve you and that don't feel good, so that you are able to then reprogram them for something that feels amazing and that is actually true about you. Because when we become our own best friends by accepting ourselves and loving ourselves, everything transforms and we can really fully live the kinds of lives we've always wanted to live. We can have the dream partner, we can have the dream career, we can have all the dreamy feels, everything can actually feel good. That is natural. So it's just a matter of finding out how we're blocking what is natural for us in our lives and change it. Because the only person that's responsible for how you live your life, how you see yourself, is you. And I think that's super empowering and super awesome. And I believe that all of us, we get to have everything that we want. We get to have it all, but it starts with a little bit of finessing of how we actually see ourselves, because nothing is more important than that. So let me know if you can relate or if this is something that you're currently working through. I'd love to hear your stories. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, appreciated it, please give me a little thumbs up below and subscribe to this channel for more videos like this one. This was Olena of popthepimple.com, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!